on, then we're just going to do it. So, so our columnist says making some types of products from recycled materials is probably as damaging to the environment as it would be to make those products from entirely non-recycled materials. So that's their claim. And then they say the recycling process for those products requires as much energy as producing them from raw materials. And almost all energy production damages the environment. So that's like their reasoning right there.
Okay. The reason in the columnist argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds of the argument. Okay. Uses the word environment in one sense in the premises and in different sense in the conclusion drawn from that premises. Number one totally has nothing to do with the passage at all. I mean, A has nothing to do with that at all.
Right.
Treats an effect of energy-related damage to the environment as if it were instead a cause, of such damage, probably as damaging to the environment as it would be making those products from entirely non-recycled. Okay. I'm gonna probably hold off on B because it does talk about the effect of the energy damage. Yeah, it talks about the effect. So I'm gonna hold off on B. Let's see what C has. Let's see, fails to consider that the particular types of recycled products that it cites may not be representative of recycled products in general. So let me read the question again. The reasoning in the columnist's argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that the argument what I see in number C is they're talking about it's considered that the particular types of recycled products that it cites may not be representative of recycled products in general.
You're not liking it?
I'm not liking C.
So we just take it out.
Take it out.
Listen to your gut, because, especially on these flaw questions, we listen to people make flaws every day, and we can think of examples of each of these.
Okay. Oh, you have one hiding down there from me.
Yeah, it makes you scroll, and the actual test it will do stuff like this too. So you want to make sure that you scroll.
Okay. Okay. Fails to consider that making products from recycled materials may have environmental benefits unrelated to energy consumption. Recycling process for those products requires as much as. I'm gonna eliminate D.
Okay. And so what did that for you? What made you eliminate it?
It's saying fails to consider. So fails to consider is like, okay, that making products from recycled materials may have environmental benefits unrelated to energy consumption. No, that it just doesn't mention anything like that in the passage. So the fails to consider is what caught me. It's like, no.
Okay.
So let's see. Presumes that simply because one phenomenon follows another phenomenon, the early phenomenon must be caused of one. Let's eliminate D. E. Yeah, because the word phenomena. Yeah, I'm going to go with B.
Okay. So it's not quite it. And it's interesting. So you said with D, you fails to consider. That's why you eliminate B and C.
Yeah.
But so with flaw questions, we're asking ourselves, what's our conclusion? How do they get to our reasoning? Do we like it? If they're telling us that it's vulnerable to criticism, there's a flaw in there. So if we think, they're saying making types of recycled materials is probably as damaging as it would be to make those from non-recycled materials. And that's because recycling takes just as much energy as making whole new products from raw materials. And then they say it damages the environment. Almost all the time, you're damaging the environment. And so they're leaving some things out. So with this flaw question, I love that you said it just doesn't mention anything like that in the passage. That's part of what makes like C and D pretty plausible, is that they are failing to consider things. because they're not saying them in the passage.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we think about it, whenever they say fail to consider, they're trying to poke a hole in the argument. Like that's the hole that's being poked. So C, particular types of recycled products it cites may not be representative. Well, we know they're not trying to talk about representation of stuff. Like that's not going
Right.
to hurt our argument. But D fails to consider that making these products might have environmental benefit.
Benefit unrelated to energy consumption.
That is going to that's a hole that we can poke in the argument. It's kind of like that last question where we're weakening the argument, because if we say, oh wait, there are environmental benefits, what they say in this stimulus is that almost all production damages the environment. But like, okay, well, what if there's benefits, and what if the benefits outweigh the damages? Then they would be wrong. So that's a flaw. So like, there's a lot of similarities here. Flaw questions, weaken questions. We'll see a necessary assumption question. We'll get into what that is later. They all kind of use this similar reasoning where we want to think, is there anything that can cast doubt on our conclusion?
Okay, so I need to study. I'm going to be studying because I want to see how these things work. Okay.
Yeah, but I would say, I think you probably would have considered it a little more if you hadn't gotten stuck on fails to consider. And that's just coming from like having not seen that language, which is fine. Now, if it says fails to consider, like if it doesn't mention in the passage, that's half the work right there.
Right. That means
then
I
you
need
ask,
to consider it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it means too, the rest of the sentence that's in there, think about, does it hurt the argument? And that's like we should be asking ourselves with these flaw questions is, is this actually something that occurs? So the author does fail to consider it, but then is that going to hurt the argument too?
Right.
And this definitely hurts the argument. We can poke so many holes in it if this is true.
Okay.
But that was good. And with B, treats ineffective energy related damage as if it were a cause, they're going to be really clear. Usually it's not going to be something causal, because they'll usually if the answer is about a cause and correlation, they'll say, we noticed these two things happening, therefore one causes the other. Like they're going to be very, very clear about that. Here they're just saying, we think this is damaging because it damages the environment.
Gotcha. Okay.
So don't feel too bad, because this is just coming out of just exposure to the test. And I have some flashcards I can send you to on flaws. Someone just made them and I just remembered that they